Hello and welcome to Macon, Atlanta, where we are talking to Atlanta innovators and community builders. And our episode today is with Kashi Sehgal. She is the founder and CEO of Retaaza, which is helping work to make the food system in Georgia more efficient. And if you are somebody who is eating food in the state of Georgia, but you don't know that it's an $82 billion industry, our state's largest, with over 42,000 farmers, and we're throwing away 40% of the produce that's made in Georgia, this episode is going to help you connect more to your local food system, learn about farmers, the challenges and opportunities in that space. I learned a ton from Kashi. She's got a heart for service and is trying to do a lot to help us be healthier and happier and to support the farmers doing the work to keep us fed and going in Georgia. So thank you, Kashi, and enjoy the episode.
Well, thank you for being here and being willing to talk Retaaza. And I know that you have a lot going on, especially in this moment. So I'm grateful for you prioritizing this and spending your time with us. And maybe we start there. Like we were talking a little bit before we started recording about the moment in which Georgia farmers find themselves. So we're recording early in 2025. This will come out spring 2025. Like what's happening right now? What are farmers facing? And how is that different from business as usual?
So in many ways, what's going on right now in the country, especially what farmers are facing, is more of the same, but it's gotten so much worse. So farmers have food waste all the time. This is product that they can't sell. 40% of what they produce is not used. Well, right now, we're in a moment where there are tariffs being imposed on exports. So our largest industry is agriculture. It's an $83.4 billion industry. And our biggest export is chickens, broilers to be exact. But all of that's being tariffed by other companies other countries in response to the tariffs that we're imposing. And so just very small ripple effects start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, because what do you do with all the chickens? Can we sell it within the country? Maybe, but we don't have systems in place for all of the product to be used already. So now these problems become magnified. And we're set up to really do food recovery for on-farm food waste, really for produce. Protein isn't really something that goes to waste regularly because you can freeze it and it holds. But now we have to rethink, how are we going to help move so much product? And then on the other side, funding is going away. We've been hearing about grant funding going away, and we're a for-profit business, so we don't really rely on grant funding for normal everyday operations. But a lot of our clients are funded through grant dollars. Programs are started through grant dollars. There's a lot of catalytic funding. That initial funding has gone away. So that learning curve and process isn't really there for a lot of companies. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple lines I want to go down from what you just brought up, and a lot there. First, like the pain that farmers are feeling right now, can you help us understand, and maybe if we categorize from like a spectrum from it's always hard to be a farmer and there's always challenges related to weather and budget and other unforeseen, to like level 9, am I going to make it through this year, or am I shutting down? Like, where are we on that spectrum? And like, how hard are Georgia farmers getting hit by the current climate and the current moment?
First of all, it is probably as bad as it's been in terms of economic climate. I mean, we got started during the pandemic, and there was a lot of food not being sold because we just weren't out in public. I suspect it's going to be as bad or nearly as bad as that if we don't figure out how to answer the need of farmers right now. I suspect there's going to be a lot of waste and I mean, when waste happens, yes, it's bad for the environment, but it's also really bad for a farmer because they're not getting paid for that.
Yeah. Can you hop in just real quick before you keep going and talk about when and why you all started and kind of core mission of Retaaza and core offering, I think it'll help characterize
it will put this all in perspective. So the pandemic happened in 2020. Farmers were throwing out produce by the record tons of pounds. News organizations were running headlines, stories about milk being thrown out by the tons of gallons and beautiful leafy greens and all these things being thrown out literally into landfills by the truckload, because restaurants weren't buying and, lots of places weren't buying food prep, going into schools and schools buying, like that wasn't a thing. So also our neighbors were lined up at food banks in record numbers because they really needed help. And I just couldn't understand how we were throwing out this life-giving resource, amazing food, when so many people needed help.
Yeah, the healthiest, best growth stuff.
The most amazing stuff. So I was serving on a task force at the time in Georgia, came back and was like, surely somebody's doing this work here. Agriculture is our biggest industry. Who can we help support through what we're trying to do with this task force? And I went down a rabbit hole. I had a mandate to talk to like 60, 70 different people around the local food ecosystem and could not find someone working on this on-farm food waste issue, which is truly an economic issue. It's truly a sustainability issue. It's truly a community issue at scale. I mean, I mentioned this before, 40%.
Is it always 40%, or is that
on average across the country, 40% of what farmers produce is thrown out. If you just put that in a perspective for a second, if our agriculture industry is an $83 billion industry in Georgia, and we're only using roughly 50%. Think about the scale of what we could do for the industry if we sold more, what that would do for tax revenue. Just put that in perspective, and how that could help small municipalities, how those funds could help farmers and their families, the tax revenue for the state, what we could put into programming for the state, the kinds of things we could do for our people, just if we didn't throw out food. Yeah. These are, again, ripple effects that could be really positive. So we started as a way to do three things, because I saw, after talking to all these people around the ecosystem, trends emerge. I had that lens. So we get dollars to farmers, we get healthy food to people in our neighborhoods who are hungry, and we get information and education to everybody else. Why is this important? It could be a brown bag to a company. It could be informing policy, which we've done. So how do we get dollars to farmers? We buy it. We're a local distributor, hyperlocal. We buy food. We sell it to companies. It's B2B. And then from what we make, we can donate food to our nonprofits who work with food access and work with our hungry. We operate community markets. So we do a lot directly with food access. We operate these amazing farm stands in challenged neighborhoods that are really trying to do better for themselves. I mean, they want prosperity, and part of that is great food, right? And the ability to feed yourself. So we make it really cheap to buy this amazing food, and we subsidize the cost from our company. We think you should pay for it. We want it to become a habit, not just something that you rely on because it's getting passed out on the corner. Like, build it into your habit. So we do a lot of behavior shifting, hopefully, a lot of nutrition coaching. And then because we have these supply chains in place with our customers, we sell food in a lot of different creative ways. We are able to help a farmer when they call us and say, I can't sell this for whatever reason. I have too much in my cooler and I'm about to harvest more and I need to dump this to make room for the fresher stuff coming in. Or a customer backed out of an order and now I'm on the hook. I'm going to have to dump the whole truck, whatever it is. We can step in and purchase that. The difference between what we do and what almost everybody else does is we pay farmers for every pound of food that we get from them. And we pay a fair price. They set the price. We work with our farmers all the time, so we know what they're charging us every day. I've had instances where farmers will charge us so little for rescued produce that I have to talk to them and say, look, you can't possibly be recovering your costs on this, let alone making a profit. And they're like, you're right, but we'll take whatever we can get. I mean, we were going to throw it out anyway.
Because zero is the alternative.
Right. And I was like, that's not the mindset. I know this is where you've been, and I know that things are hard, but we really are truly here to make your life better. Charge us what it's going to cost you to be whole, and then add a little bit more. Because if you aren't making money as a business and you go away, how do we feed ourselves? Like, who feeds us? Labs? I don't want to eat lab generated food. I mean, we all do it, but the better alternative is just to support the farmers that are already creating our food.
Yeah,
I think. And
so, I mean, I perceive that you're kind of correcting a market failure by being connective tissue. So then you're incumbent then to find a distribution outlet and find someone who can take that food.
Correct.
That a farmer just wouldn't have the wherewithal, capability, capacity to reach out to and connect to. So that connection wouldn't be made without you all.
I feel like you're like hitting all the points we make. So we are the sales and marketing arm for a farmer. We ask farmers as a society to be experts at everything, from the weather to seeds, to the soil, to machinery, labor, then actual growing, irrigation, like all the things you need to know.
And take it to the Carter Center parking lot on Saturday and sell it.
Exactly. Yeah. Then like how to sell and who to sell it to and how to package it and like food safety and like all the things, right? There isn't another industry that I can think of that requires the same broad level of knowledge without people there to support you in like very specialized ways along the way. There are industries that have popped up around many other industries that, like, even for lawyers, there's people that just do e-discovery. You know, I mean, there are support systems in a lot of other places. Where are the support systems for our farmers? So we are there to be one of the most important support systems, I think, which is how do you sell what you are producing?
How many farmers in Georgia do y'all work with?
We work with about 60 right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And of all sizes. Before the pandemic happened, we were still wasting 40% of what was being produced. And that's at restaurants just buying as normal. They can't all buy local food because it's also seasonal. So if you need a tomato year round to make pasta sauce, either you're bringing it in for places that have it grown seasonally, which is what we do now. I mean, lots come in from Mexico and other places, or you just don't use tomatoes when they're not in season. Mm-hmm. But most people want their food, you know, they want their tomato sauce all year round.
Yeah, we've become deconditioned to seasons when food is available.
Right.
Sure.
Exactly. So, you know, if we could train ourselves to eat the way that the earth intended us to eat, that's a whole different thing. Then the restaurant industry makes a lot of sense. But, you know, buying locally, we've also had to do some training of our clients and how to prepare seasonal menus and how to think about this seasonality. It's wild. I'm learning so much.
Being restaurateurs in that example, or
being hospitals.
Oh.
I mean, all sorts of clients. A lot of our wholesale clients are having to think about menus differently because they do want to purchase locally. Now, I will say most of them use us as a supplement to what they're buying already. So, and I think that's probably what most people will do. They have their big broadline distributor. So that's a Sysco, Aramark, US Foods. So they're buying tomatoes all year long. And when they're in season, they buy them from us when we have them. But we don't have tomatoes all year long. We have them for 4 or 5 months out of the year. So it's a way for us to also get our foot in the door and not be disruptive to the giant that's already got the client. So we can play with everybody, which is the way I prefer to do it. I mean, you're never going to just come in and say, all right, we're not doing it this way anymore. We're going to do just local. Like, that's a hard transition.
Yeah. Why, thinking about root cause, why is 40% of produce thrown out?
There are so many reasons. I can give you several examples that we have just from what we have experienced and had to help farmers with. One of the big reasons is orders that are placed that are turned away at big box retailers. So your supermarkets, your, other people that are selling food. Example, I was at a conference at the beginning of the year. We start every year at this conference in Savannah. It's a growers conference. Within 5 minutes of me being there, one of our state representatives flagged me down and said, I have to take you to meet this farmer. Okay. He said, this big retailer ordered, the farmer was telling me this big retailer ordered 5 truckloads of citrus from me. So satsumas and grapefruit and all the different things. And I verified that they really wanted it. And so I harvested all of the citrus for them. And then we were ready to send it to them. And they said, you know what? Never mind. We don't need it. 5 truckloads. Putting that in perspective, poundage wise, it's about 40,000 pounds a truck. So 5 times 40, 200,000 pounds of food. Just without a thought in the world. All of a sudden it doesn't have a home. What does a farmer do when they're not paid for that? And that just gets dumped. Some of it goes to feed animals, cows and pigs. Some of it just, so things can get left in the field, but the farmer will have to pay to dump that. Not only did they have to arrange the truck to get to the retailer, if it's already on the way, in some cases, which happens, it's mid route and a farmer hears it's being canceled, they then have to pay the truck company to move it to a different place. So they incur more costs actually, and then they incur costs to dump it. So, it's actually costing farmers to have these loads be canceled. Sometimes there's a bad frost coming and they will pre-harvest, what seems ready, and they haven't lined up a buyer yet. So they're scrambling to find, they thought they had 2 more weeks or something. There are lots of reasons that food doesn't get used. Sometimes you don't have the workers to actually harvest the product. Right now, we talked about the moment. There's a lot going on with the individuals who actually go into the fields and harvest our food. I can guarantee you, if all those people went away, people in the United States would not step up to harvest the food. What do? There's so much support that is needed. There's just so much room for waste.
I'm not an expert in this industry.
Neither am I.
And I would probably argue with that. But I hear that about the 5 truckloads getting thrown out. And I'm like, well, that seems like a clear market failure, and they need a better contracting system. Because if the retailer has all of the purchasing power and can just make that decision with no recourse, that's a contractual failure. And we have the ability to do smarter contracts than that.
Yes, we do. There? We do have the ability to put in these contracts, but how do farmers enforce it? When there's a David and a Goliath situation, there are only a few retailers that can take that much product. You can probably think about who they are. And they're buying on a national scale. If you're a farmer, how much of a problem do you want to become to your biggest customer? Demand planning is a thing, and we can get better at it, but we have to put in a lot of systems to get to a place where we can truly demand forecast and demand plan in a way that is accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm super compelled when you say it's an $82 billion industry. We're wasting 40%. If we found a way to not do that, could we be a $120 billion industry?
Absolutely. We could be.
Flip side, what if I said maybe there shouldn't be 42,000 farmers? Maybe it sounds like there should be 31,000 farmers or some.
Well, we're on our way to that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are getting out of farming.
Is that fair? Is that foul logic? Like maybe there's just an inherent market imbalance that has to correct for the supply and demand to more easily meet, and therefore individual farmers wouldn't have as tough of a time. Like, is that valid logic? Is it invalid logic?
Sure. I mean, in a market system, there are businesses that don't survive. Absolutely. But I would argue that their industry is, to hate to use this word, but I use it a lot, fair. So you're not even on a remotely level playing field as a farmer that has, this is true for big business too. A farmer that is a giant business has so much more resources afforded to it, but there are big farms going out of business too across the country. We can train our farmers on how to sell better, and there are programs going into place. One of the programs that has been cut was training farmers on how to better demand plan, how to better sell, how to set your pricing, how to do these things.
Who was running that program?
Without coaching. It's a program being run through state departments of agriculture and then across the country. And so then they pick program partners that have the ability to go in and support farmers in that
via federal funding grants that are distributed by the states.
Yeah.
Got it.
So the funding comes down from the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, to the states. So the state departments of agriculture, and then that goes out to organizations that they feel like can really train up the farmers.
Yeah. When I hear that, it feels painful in a number of areas. Where do you feel it? Like, where does the why really animated for you?
The why for why we do this? I have done a lot of things over the course of my life, and to me, it's always about just making someone's life better. And when I found out, I've been in technology basically my whole career. When I found out about how farmers were treated, I couldn't stop digging in to understand why. I just couldn't stop asking why. Why does this happen? Why does this happen? Well, if that happens, why is this happening? It's so mind-boggling to me. And it's such a systems-wide issue. It feels like something that if we can truly tackle and figure out, we could impact not just one life, but millions of lives across this country and across the world. The ripple effects are just too great, I think, to ignore. And these are people that are working really hard. Really, really sad. And if I can be that person that can be there for them, I can't think of something better to do.
Yeah.
Because it's also feeding our communities.
Yeah. It strikes me that farming and education are probably the two places where we're like, we know in our bones that this matters.
Right.
For the well-being of all of us and everything as a people. And yet we haven't quite figured out the market dynamics for how it should work.
If we could just pour money into these two groups, like you're saying, a lot of the ripple effects that we are paying for right now would get better, right? Healthcare, or like what we're paying for, it's not preventative, it's reactionary. So, just we could pay less on the back end if we spent more money on the front end, right? Jobs. Think about education. Like, there's a lot that we could do if people were better critical thinkers. Not let's teach people about what happened in history. Like, I don't even know why that's a debate, but how do you think critically for yourself? If we can teach people to be thinkers, what kind of society would we have right now?
I'm glad you mentioned that you've always worked in technology. I'm curious, what's the role for tech in making this market work more efficiently, both your business and kind of generally? And that can be any kind of technology. I'm particularly interested in the AI moment in which we find ourselves. Like, how does tech fit in, and what should happen? What should we be optimistic about?
Technology has very much been a thing. AI, I think, is going to allow us to be better at predicting what we need. We're building a tool right now that is AI enabled. We are going to be able to help our farmers with the data that we have understand, okay, for the last 3 years or 4 years, you've had waste around this time. It's going to alert us, hey, this farmer is probably coming up on an issue. You should reach out. So we can pre-plan instead of that becoming like a emergency situation where we need to find a way to use that or sell that. We can help a farmer think about, hey, are you thinking about the satsumas you've got growing? Are you good? Do you need help? Do we have 3 months to start thinking about this? There's a lot of room for better informed decision making.
How do y'all decide what to do and what not to do as a company? Because I mean, even in this conversation, and I tend to get excited about things, but I'm like, all right, there's a distribution play. There's a sales and marketing play. There's obviously a pricing play that we're talking about. There's a data readiness play. You mentioned building an AI thing. You're taking one-off calls about specific orders that otherwise would have been diverted. How can you buy those and then sell them? Like, that feels like a lot to take on.
It is.
How do you decide what's yours to do and what's not?
To your point, there is a lot to do. And I realize we cannot do all of it. We will, it's one thing to focus on a systemic issue, but you don't have to be the entire system. We're doing a lot of it. We're connectors. We are distributors. But at the end of the day, there are organizations doing pieces of work. It's not like we're the only ones working in this industry.
Like, do y'all own cold storage trucks? And like, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we don't have a whole fleet because we don't need it. We can work with partners. I truly believe working through partnership is what any industry needs, but especially this industry. We don't need to own every truck. We don't need to have every relationship with every food access organization that exists to get food out to people. There are nonprofits that work on food access, and they have relationships with hundreds of food access partners, churches, schools, different kind of food pantries, all kinds of stuff. Why do we need that expertise? We just need to be able to get what we do really well is we work with farms. We know who the farmers are. We know where the waste is. We can be the just-in-time model. We can go and get it. We can pay farmers for it. And then we can move it. Where do we move it to? We don't have to be the experts at that. We can get it to our partner who knows how to get it out. How do we help farmers with labor? I don't need to be a labor expert, but I can connect them to someone who is. There's only so much time in the day. And if we do too many things, we will not survive as a business. There will be no momentum to build because we will be doing everything. And so we won't be able to find traction in an area.
What's your biggest bet? If we're sitting here and having this conversation in 2030 and we're like, why has Retaaza crushed it? What's gone right?
I think the success of our company is going to be built on a program that we haven't even mentioned yet, which is corporate wellness. It is our produce as a benefit program. So we have turned any business into a potential buyer of local food. So now we can move an infinite number of pounds. You can buy produce for your employees as a wellness benefit. It's like the most amazing wellness benefit, right? Instead of asking them to jump on a treadmill at a gym, you could ask them to eat healthier. Really, no exercise routine is complete without you start with what you put in your body. So think about how that affects your healthcare costs and your employees' satisfaction with seeing this beautiful, life-giving food like there for them to just take home and enjoy. There's so much heart and love wrapped up in food. It's that feel good. Food is love. So I think this program has the ability to really catapult us. It's our best program. It enables us to do so much of our mission. And I think we've just scratched the surface.
Can we talk pricing for a second?
Sure.
So I've always thought I'm basically going to buy milk, eggs, produce consistently throughout the year. We do it through Fresh Harvest CSA box now. And if we didn't do it through Fresh Harvest, we do it through otherwise. I've often thought, I would write a bulk check to a farmer at the beginning of the year to get my eggs or my carrots or whatever it is consistently throughout the year that might let them forward recognize the revenue and then ultimately like lower my consumption cost. Could that be a win-win? And I'm curious how you see pricing as a lever that could help farmers and what's being done there, what could be done there.
So we started a program with one of our partners here that runs farmers markets, and we wanted to figure out how we could rescue that food at the end. So the program is now us purchasing what's left over at the end of a farmer's market from these farms that opt in, and we donate it to a nonprofit and they use it. And it's become the most beautiful story. We're at Grant Park Farmers Market. We're buying food from those farmers, donating it to Slow Food Emory. And those students are teaching other students how to cook, knife skills, cooking skills. But that food is being served to Winship cancer patients. Like, if that's not such a true, I'm getting choked up because that is such an embodiment of what we're trying to do, and it's on such a small scale, but it's students, it's farmers, it's community, it's health. It's such a beautiful program. How does pricing come into play? These farmers have farmers market prices. We all know that farmers markets are kind of expensive. And a lot of the farmers that we are working with came to us with those prices as prices we were going to buy with. And we were like, let's figure out what this really needs to look like. What is wholesale pricing? So we walked them through, okay, what are your costs? What does this need to look like? What does this look like in the wholesale industry? Some of those farmers don't sell to wholesale. They only sell through farmers markets. So they don't have a thought about how they would put in wholesale pricing. But now that they have, does that open them up to be able to sell to other wholesale clients? Now they understand what that looks like. More needs to be done. We just assume everybody knows how to do this, but none of us know how to do things until we learn it.
How hard is it or isn't it? How complicated is it for figuring out a farm's operation to transition to wholesale pricing?
It's not hard, but you have to be systematic about it. It's not just your fertilizer and water and the things that are going in the field, but are you paying people, trucks? What is truly involved in making sure that makes it to market? What is the cost?
Yeah, I can see how that all helps the market clear.
Yeah.
And helps it move. What do you want people listening to this who don't work in the food system, but obviously are consumers of it, to know and to do differently than they might if they hadn't listened to this podcast?
If we're not teaching our kids that food comes from the ground and somebody spent time and energy to grow this and connect people back to that soil and dirt, we're really doing ourselves a disservice.
Yeah. Totally. And then we've talked about everything from tariffs to waste inefficiency to sales and marketing challenges. I'm gonna start that over. We've talked in this episode so far about everything from tariffs to waste and inefficiency to marketing and sales challenges to pricing challenges, emerging technology. I'm curious if you surveyed everything that you all work on and that kind of touches food system generally, and you had a magic wand and I said, all right, it's Kashi's world. What is it that you think really needs to change or be fixed to get us to a better place?
I think what will move the needle is procurement policy reform, incentivizing people to actually buy local food. It's going to take that. But true market assistance for farmers, not insurance and subsidies and those things. How do we really help farmers put in place a system that is going to work, a market system that's going to work? It's making sure that we're incentivizing grocery stores to buy local, move food fewer miles, buy from your backyard. Maybe you get some kind of tax benefit for buying locally before you buy from Mexico. There's nothing wrong with buying from other places when you need to supplement, but why don't we buy from ourselves first? That will truly help our farms, and we'll have better food in our grocery stores.
Yeah. And does that start with government action?
I think a lot of it does.
Is there anything that you would like to leave the audience with on just a hope for Atlanta, a hope for Georgia, anything that you would want to be true for us?
I hope that, I can put it in the sense of our food ecosystem here. We have some amazing people working, not just on the farming side of things, but really doing the work to connect farmers to our communities, to feed our communities. There's incredible work being done. And I hope that we can find a better way for all of us to be connected, for that work to really translate into a better Atlanta. And I truly mean Metro Atlanta, for all of us. Yeah. We have the ability to have such a rich community here. I am Atlanta's biggest cheerleader. I'm from here. It's my hometown. I want so much for this city, and I think we do a great job at local food from a restaurant perspective. I want to see local food become our way of life here.
Yeah. Where's your favorite Atlanta restaurant to go get a good local food meal?
Oh, there are so many good spots.
Maybe you don't have to pick one, but it'd be cool if you did.
Somebody that I just think is doing great work in veggies is Steven Satterfield. I mean, he's just he wrote a whole cookbook around vegetables, which is amazing. And he's done it again. But there are great meals all around Atlanta. You can go really pricey and go to Ugly Betty. It's truly worth it. It is outstanding. Outstanding. Little Bear is great. Just every time I go, it feels like a novel experience. And you love that. You can go to the same restaurants and get your favorite dishes, but it's also lovely to be surprised. How is this going to go together? And then you try it and it's amazing. Yeah. Love things like that.
Yeah. Little Bear, we went for my birthday. XL hunk of veg. That's why I went. Highly recommended if you're hearing this. Well, thank you so much, Kashi. I appreciate you spending the time.
Thank you so much for the time.
Learned a ton. Super interesting.
Absolutely.
That's our show today. Thank you for watching, listening, Making Atlanta. As always, we appreciate your input and journeying with us. If you've got ideas for future episodes you want to hear, if you've got feedback for this one, please leave us a comment. Please subscribe. Keep going on this journey. There was so much good stuff. Food is medicine, healthy food systems, B Corps, how we use technology and business as a force for good to build the Atlanta and the Georgia that we want to live in and raise our kids in. So I'm grateful to Kashi for the work that she's doing and for all the people in and around our city and state who are trying to help us walk in a better way. As always, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Good luck. You're doing great out there.